My name is Sharon Hughes and I'm the Leadership Academy Manager for The Wheel, and I am genuinely so excited to be facilitating this storytelling session this morning, taking over from my friend Claire McGowan. I'm lucky enough to have spoken to all of the storytellers in advance, and I just know you're in for such a real treat. The transformative social movements of the past century, such as gender equality, disability and LGBT+ rights, social inclusion, community development and climate justice, did not start in the corridors of power. They were sparked by grassroots action in community halls and around kitchen tables, and every change began and begins with a story. Stories are the lifeblood of our sector, and we wanted to shine a light on that with this year's theme, Community at the Heart of Our Democracy. Stories put faces to figures, courage to causes, and truth to the challenges, and above all, they remind us and you why our work matters. At this special summit session, we're thrilled to have 5 voices from across Ireland's community and voluntary sector who will share their stories with us today. They'll reflect on their personal journeys, why they do what they do, and the value and meaning of community in their own lives. So first up, we have Amina Moustafa. Amina has extensive experience in using community development and sports-based approaches to promoting social inclusion, building community resilience and addressing social issues. Amina currently works with the local Loud development group, supporting families and communities experiencing marginalisation and poverty. Amina previously worked with the Glencree Centre for Peace and Reconciliation, supporting women who've been affected by conflict and connecting women peace builders on an all-island basis. She is passionate about using sport and social inclusion and has been involved with Sports Against Racism Ireland since 2014. She holds a BA in Neuroscience from Trinity College and a degree in Global Youth Work and Development Education from Maynooth University. Today, Amina will be telling us about alternative approaches to community building and how sport can be used as a tool to address social issues. So, warm boulabus for Amina, please.
Thank you, Sharon, for that introduction, and it gives you all an insight into my story. So today I'm going to share a bit about my personal journey to community development and peace building. When people ask me how I ended up working in peace building and community development, they often assume that there was a clear path behind it. Honestly, for me, there wasn't. My journey started with sport. As a young person, I loved sport. My mum signed me up to everything. I played Gaelic football, I swam, I did a bit of table tennis, I played taekwondo, and like many people, I understood sport mainly as exercise and promoting positive health and well-being. It was a way to de-stress and spend time with friends. You went to training, you played a match, and you went home. At that time, as Sharon mentioned, I was studying neuroscience, and I never imagined how my work would eventually lead to community development. But in 2014, something shifted for me. 2014 was the year that FIFA lifted the hijab ban. Around the same time, 2 young leaders, Abdul Haji and his friend, decided to create a Muslim women's football club to support Muslim women who were often marginalised from sport. Abdul's sister, Fadila Haji, was a friend of mine. She wore the hijab and hadn't always felt comfortable in her local sports clubs. And she didn't see people that looked like her represented in sport. That absence mattered. So they decided to do something about it. And that project was called Hijabs and Hat Tricks. For anyone that doesn't know, a hat trick is when you score 3 goals in a row. And my friend Fadila Haji invited me to join. Looking back now, I realise that experience completely changed the direction of my life. Because for the first time, I understood that sport could be used for something bigger. It could challenge stereotypes. It could create a sense of belonging. It could promote social inclusion. It could create opportunities for people to learn from each other through experience and relationship building. But what stuck most for me about this project was that football wasn't at the centre of it. People were. Sport was simply a tool to bring people together. And that was something that I had never experienced in the world of sport before. At the time, I wasn't particularly good at football, but that didn't matter. The space was about much more than our ability or performance. It was about creating an environment where people felt comfortable enough to show up as themselves. Because we focused on building trust, relationships, we were able to speak about things that were personal to us. We were building friendships and creating a sense of community. And what evolved was that we spoke openly about experiences of racism and discrimination in the classroom, in the workplace, even on public transport. We talked about navigating identity and questions of belonging. Those conversations, they stayed with me because people felt they were speaking to others who understood them. There was a sense of being listened to without needing to justify your experience. And for me, as someone who's Muslim and Irish and Egyptian, so my mom is from Ireland and my dad is Egyptian, that really resonated deeply with me. I had understood that feeling of navigating multiple identities and sometimes feeling perceived as being different. And me personally, as a young person, trying to understand where you fit in and where you belong. And what I valued most about this particular project was that it recognized the complexity of people's experiences rather than making assumptions about them. There were different cultural and religious perspectives within our group, different understandings of modesty, different comfort levels, and this was particularly relevant at the time in 2014 because the ban on the hijab was representing the regulation and control of Muslim women's bodies in sport and about women's bodies in general. So what was important to us was that we had a conversation about what we wanted to wear and what we needed. So we sat down and together we designed our training kit collectively. People spoke about what they felt comfortable in. We asked questions, we challenged assumptions. People's voices shaped the space and designed what we wore. That taught me something really important. Some of the most meaningful community work begins not with finding solutions, but with listening. The project taught me about the importance of relationships. In our team, if someone didn't show up that day at training, teammates checked in. They asked, how were people doing? And through conversations, hidden barriers to participation started to emerge. One issue that came up was that some parents weren't comfortable with their daughters going out after dark to training. It was something that we had never considered before. But because relationships and trust were built, people felt comfortable to share. So the training time changed. It was a small adjustment that made a huge impact on participation. And I think that stayed with me because it showed how people often already hold knowledge, insight, and experience or expertise that we need. But it's only how do we create those spaces to support that knowledge and experience to flourish and to be shared. This project was about human connection. That experience completely changed my career trajectory. I moved from neuroscience into sports sociology. I wanted to learn more about the relationship between sport and society, between sport ideologies and how it affected our social construct and how society is formed. I moved into peace building because I wanted to understand how we could facilitate dialogue and challenge stereotypes in alternative ways like sport, and create opportunities for social learning that transcends language barriers and cultural differences. These lessons led me to a path of community development and peace building on a border county. In my work now, many of the guiding principles remain the same. A lot of my work now involves supporting communities in divided contexts, facilitating space for dialogue, supporting people to have their voices heard, particularly those that are often marginalised. As was mentioned before, we are living in a time where many people feel unheard, disconnected, and reduced to labels or assumptions. And in response to that, I think meaningful community work requires us to slow down, to listen to lived experiences, and to resist the urge to approach communities as a problem to be fixed, rather than working with communities. It starts with listening. It starts with relationship building. And it starts with recognizing that communities themselves hold knowledge, insight, and expertise about their own realities. Looking back now, I realized the most important thing I learnt about sport, or through sport, was never actually about sport. It was about what becomes possible when people feel heard, valued, and included. And I'll leave you with this. The most meaningful stories in our communities begin in listening to each other, centering lived experience, and building the kinds of relationships that allow people to feel like they belong. Thank you.
Told you it was going to be good. Next up, thank you so much, Amina. Amina is on LinkedIn. Indeed, all of our speakers are. Do feel free to connect with her. I'm sure she's available for events across the country. Next up, we have Paula Soraghan. Paula is a proud disabled woman who is very passionate about activism through an intersectional lens. She understands the importance of collective empowerment and representation. Paula is employed as the Voice Community Development Worker for Kilkenny, Carlow, Wexford and Waterford in Independent Living Movement Ireland since January 2022. As part of this work, Paula is connecting with disabled people from different backgrounds and working collectively with them in online spaces to make social change. Paula is passionate about peer support and disabled people sharing their lived experiences as a collective to bringing about change. Paula's story this afternoon is about the importance of identity and perspective in community. So a big hand there.
Important to get comfy. Thanks, everyone. So my name is Paula Soraghan, and for my input today, I want to cover a few things. Just first of all, a bit of an introduction about me. Then I will give a bit of context and information on Independent Living Movement Ireland. Apologies in advance. I will use acronyms, but I'll always explain what the acronym stands for. We love them in Isle of Mai. Then I'll talk a bit about my experiences with community development, personally and through my work. Next, I'll move on to what the slogan, "Nothing about us without us," means to me and the importance of intersectionality. And I will close with a call to action for everybody. So, I am Paula, but I'm also a daughter, a sister, an auntie, a friend, a colleague, and many more things. But I also was born with this condition called cerebral palsy. I didn't really know what that meant. That's what it's called. It's been called different things over the years. And I always kind of felt a wee bit afloat, not really sure like what that meant, that something was kind of not right, and trying to fit in, trying to kind of be normal. But let's face it, normal's overrated. So, as I say, that's kind of how I would have seen myself for many, many years, kind of would have tried to pull myself up by my bootstraps and have a positive attitude. But then things changed in the summer of 2019. So I was at a bit of a loose end and, kind of feeling a wee bit afloat, and I wanted to get more involved. And I would have tried previously to get involved in different groups, but certain groups wouldn't have felt right. So I said, okay, I need to keep going and keep trying to reach out. So I reached out to an acquaintance from college and I said, I'd like to get more involved. I didn't know what that looked like. I didn't know what it meant. But he was actually working for the Independent Living Movement Ireland as the policy worker at the time. And he mentioned that they were having their annual general meeting in the Gibson Hotel on the 28th of September 2019. And I find dates are very significant, so you'll understand in a bit why that's important. So up I went. I got the bus up to Dublin. I'm a Louth woman, born and reared, so not too far. But I got the bus up and I had very low expectations. Because let's face it, the AGM meetings, they're not exactly going to, light a fire under many people's bellies. But I was intrigued and interested. So I said, I'll give it a go. I've got nothing to lose. So I went up, and that was a massive turning point for me. And I was really glad because I finally found that sense of community that I really wanted. And I was welcomed in by like-minded people, many people who are cherished friends and colleagues. And I was really fortunate with the timing because, as we all know, 6 months later, in March 2020, the whole world was in lockdown with COVID. So I was pretty lucky with the timing. And I also like to joke and say that my social life during COVID was actually better than my social life before COVID. So I was working remotely from home, and that was fine. I was working full time. But then in the evenings, I had the Isle of My online spaces, and I loved them. So I'd gotten a taste and I wanted more. So I stayed actively involved as a member over the first few years, and did many online courses, and met many lovely people and made new friends. And then I actually went back online and I got my qualification in disability equality through St. Angela's. And since January 2022, I've actually been employed as the community development worker for the virtual online inclusive communities for empowerment, or VOICE for short, which is funded by the Department of Rural and Community Development. So through that work, I'm actually connecting with disabled people online and in person in Wexford, Waterford, Carlow and Kilkenny. And my colleague Nicola Meikle is connecting with disabled people in Cork, Kerry and Tipperary. And through the funding of from the department, we've actually successfully launched a disabled persons organisation in Wexford, Waterford, Carlow, Cork, Tipperary. Kilkenny and Kerry will be launched later this year. But Isle of May has a very strong presence as a DPO nationally, which is fantastic, but we just found that there wasn't that really local link for a disabled persons organisation in these areas, and we wanted to bridge that gap. And just to clarify, a DPO, it's led by disabled people for disabled people. It's like a union for disabled people. So it will be separate to a disability service provider. And it's really about having an autonomous space to have our voices heard as a collective on issues that affect us. And next, I just want to, talk a bit about intersectionality and the importance of it, because disabled people, we're not one-dimensional human beings. I'm a proud queer disabled woman. I connect with many disabled people from various backgrounds, and that obviously affects the decisions that we make in our lives and the policy that affects us. So it's about working with many different disabled people and getting them on local structures and national structures and at the tables, and to have a seat at the tables that affect them. So it's about co-creation and collaboration, and it's not passive. And as I say, my life has completely changed. I used to think that, there was something wrong with me because I had this label of cerebral palsy. Now I have accepted that it's part of who I am. It's fine. It's like having black curly hair and hazel eyes. And I've understood that I'm not the problem, society is the problem. So it's society that has to change. And it's about genuinely making disabled people feel included and empowered in their communities. And thankfully, I've been able to do that with many different disabled people throughout my work, and really kind of pay it forward, so to speak, because I know what it's like to be on the other side and how isolating and lonely it is. And that brings me then to my next point about the nothing about us without us. And that's really important because it means through community development and connecting with disabled people that they have to be active in the decisions that affect their lives and on the ground. So it's not just about asking them for consultation and then moving on and tick the box and tokenism. It's about them realising how the policy that's written, that they're involved and what it actually looks like for their lives on the ground through the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Disabled People and the National Disability Strategy. And the work that I've been a part of has been very successful thanks to the support from funders and various organisations, including allyship, which is really important because we can't do it on our own. And finally, I want to finish with a call to action and a quote from Maya Angelou, which is, "Do the best you can until you know better. Then, when you know better, do better." Thank you very much.
Another amazing story, and Paula is a wonderful storyteller for fun as well. She has beautiful stories online. You can find them on YouTube if you'd like to go and do. Was that part of a project? It was a part of a project that you did the stories for on YouTube.
Oh, the online, the explaining what
yeah.
That was the video project we did nationally last year.
It's wonderful. I really enjoyed it. Recommend it to anyone. So thank you so much. Next up, we have Damian Quinn, the only person I think is more prolific than me on LinkedIn. Damian Quinn is the founder of Spéire Nua, an organisation which supports people to rebuild their lives through lived experience, leadership, peer mentoring, personal development, policy entrepreneurship and innovation, with a strong focus on rehabilitation, reintegration, opportunity creation, authentic connection and championing lasting change. Damian works across Ireland to create pathways for people impacted by the justice system, helping turning lived experience into leadership, policy influence, purpose and lasting community connection. Damian's story is about the third sector community and how that led him on a journey to policy entrepreneurship and understanding governance that he now feels guides his life. So I'll hand you over to Damian Quinn.
Thank you, Sharon, and thank you all. Nice to be here. Great view out there as well. So Damian Quinn is my name. I'm based in Galway. I would have grew up in the UK and as an Irish young lad, and over there I would have spent a lot of my childhood feeling like I didn't fit in. What happened then, later years and teenage years, the family unit broke down and then we moved back to Ireland. And then I was a teenager in Ireland feeling like I didn't fit in because I was an English teenager. So that was quite the challenge. You know, it was a life of not really feeling like fitting in anywhere. And that family unit then, when it broke down, like, it led to a lot of challenges. You know, it led to a lot of disadvantage. We were living alone as children. It wasn't the statutory agencies or the upwardly mobile people that were coming in to check on us. It was people that had the least that would often come in and see that we had food in our bellies and fire on and all that type of stuff, and people from communities that would be very much othered. I have a lot of love for the traveller community. I didn't know what travellers were until I came to Ireland, but I learned very quickly who they are and what they're all about, and I have a graw for the community, and I know the community has a graw for me. Around all that, anyways, education was always my refuge. I loved to learn. Like when I was being bullied, that's what I relied on, because I always excelled in education. But because of early childhood responsibilities, I had to leave school before the junior cert, and I had to go out into the working world and provide for my little brother. What happened then in around 2002, a lot of skilled people from different countries came into the country with bags of qualifications, and I was a master of all trades, or a jack of all trades, sorry, and a master of none. I had no qualifications, so I couldn't compete. So at the age of 23, I had to go back and get my junior cert. I had to, it was very hard as well as a young dad. You know, like, I suppose a default response to shielding ourselves from poverty was getting engaged in the drug trade and all that kind of stuff, and taking drugs and all that type of thing. And I defaulted back into that. Now, I was doing very well, doing my junior cert. I got all distinctions and all that type of thing, but I was still eating over the fence. I was on a crossroads. I wanted to change, but circumstances and all that just didn't allow for it. I didn't believe they did anyways, and I got caught. I went to prison then for a couple of years, and in prison I finished my leaving cert, and I did some open university stuff in business and that type of thing. And I believed naively that I'd hit the ground running when I'd leave. I'd be able to start again, reimagine myself, you know, a new person, new life, get everybody back and that type of thing. That couldn't have been further from the truth. My background let me down everywhere I went, despite serving my time. So much so, I had to run out of the country and all that kind of stuff. I was back to square one within a very short period of time. And look, it was horrible, to be honest. But in that, I found out about myself. I found out that I could run as far and as fast as I like, but I would never be able to run away from myself. And that was when I started to work on myself and get myself right. Luckily, I came across Equal Ireland. Equal Ireland is a not-for-profit third education provider, and I would have started doing business, community development, leadership and management and that type of thing. I joined because I was interested in business studies, but I found very quickly I started to learn about community development, empowering marginalized people, empowering marginalized communities. I wanted to give back because I had spent 10 years being a professional bollocks and it got me nowhere. So in that then I started to look at community development, wanted to get involved in everything, trying to volunteer here, there and everywhere, but for years and years my background kept letting me down. Luckily, I stuck with it and I went to an open day at UCC and I heard about a lady who wrote a policy as part of her thesis. It was about working to change. It was a social enterprise employment strategy. Sorry, the first one was a new way forward and then it was working to change. And basically it was about integrating violent prisoners back into the workforce. And when I heard that, I said, I need to find out who she is. I need to reach out. I need to get involved. This is what I want to do. So I did my master's, I wrote Spira Nua, and basically it was life after prison for the reformed individual, barriers or opportunities. And the whole idea was to develop a safe path for people with criminal histories so that they could use that then when they go for Garda vetting and try and show that they've committed to change and they've done a lot of work on themselves. So with that then, a lot of people got really interested in what we were doing. They could all see merit in what we were saying. So rather than let it gather dust on a shelf, the thesis, I approached Social Entrepreneurs Ireland, and they gave us a bit of funding to get a program up and running. Fast forward a couple of years, that idea has now been written into the Building Pathways Together Criminal Justice Strategy as an action. And that little piece of work, a college project, has now led to systems change. They are now putting certificates of commitment to change into practice. And we signed the contract on that last week. And a massive thank you to, in particular, to Lorna Conway. She's moved from justice into higher education, but she was really a solid connection there. And Mary O'Regan and Stephen Dillon and all the rest of them. But with that then, what's Spira Nua about? It's not a business. Like I hear a lot of stuff about protecting employers and all that kind of stuff. We're all about protecting each other. We're all about helping each other level up. That's what we're about. Like there's no them and us. That's what community development means to me. We're all in this together. I heard earlier like challenges around funding and all that type of stuff. For me, it's been a critique for years and years and years. Every funding call is a competition. It splits us up, we don't get the opportunity to kind of come together, to work together. We actually actively compete against each other, and that is the biggest challenge that the sector faces. For me, for the guys, just to be a part of the journey and to see who they are now today, the little bits of support, watch them go on, lead, that's what leadership is about. Leadership is about creating more leaders. Employment is not about managing people and assets and things. It's about bringing out the best in everybody. And that's what we try to do together, collectively, in friendship here in Ireland, in Northern Ireland, and beyond. So with that then, I suppose for me, I'm all about systems change, I've seen it, I've seen the worst and I've seen the best. And I've been very, very lucky to surround myself with wonderful collaborators in this room, many familiar faces. And I guarantee you I would not have come this far without being able to bounce off you from time to time and rely on you for support and friendship and connection. And just before I finish up, I just want to say a massive shout out to Changing Ireland, a magazine, a very, very, very prestigious magazine. I found it in UCC. It was introduced to me by my lecturer, Noreen Byrne. And since I read that publication, I've got to watch all of your work come to life on that magazine, and it's inspired me to continue doing what I do and continue my love for the third sector. Thank you.
We met Damian because, was it Colette that you bumped into on the train one time? And she overheard a conversation, and it goes to show how it was a simple conversation on the train that led to a follow-up phone call. But one of my favourite stories about you is that, what was it the judge said? You're the only person who asked to stay in prison. Yeah, because he wanted to finish up his qualification. Brilliant. Thank you so much, Damian. Next up, we have Kiren Khalid. Kiren is a programme manager of the Women's Programme at NASC, where she works to support migrant and refugee women to overcome barriers to inclusion, employment and participation. With a focus on empowerment, skill building and community engagement, she designs and leads initiatives that address social isolation, language barriers and economic inclusion. Her work centres on amplifying women's voices, fostering resilience and ensuring meaningful participation in society. Kiren's journey into this work is both professional and deeply personal. A migrant woman herself, her work is rooted in advocacy and centres on amplifying women's voices, fostering resilience and ensuring meaningful participation in society. She has extensive experience working across complex and evolving multicultural contexts, including working in Pakistan and Afghanistan post 9/11 as an advocacy officer with an international NGO. Today, Kiren's story will talk about inclusion and how the building of community is the first step to democratic participation and how recognising that migrant women is fundamental to community. Thank you so much.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much, Sharon, for that. So I don't do this at all often. So when I sat down to prepare for today, I thought I'll start with work, with NASC, with the women's program, with the things that I can point to and kind of measure. But I realized fairly quickly that this wasn't where it needed to begin. Because when I really asked myself that what it means to talk about community being at the heart of a democracy, not as a concept, but as a lived experience, it's not a framework or strategy. It's a feeling, being a migrant woman, I know very well. It's the feeling of arriving somewhere new and not knowing if you belong or if you matter. I remember landing in Shannon, being picked by a woman I barely knew then, but who would become a lifelong friend. I remember standing in front of the apartment building, arriving there, and something just breaking. I sat in that car crying, unable to get out. And this was not, pretty, quiet crying. This was like heaving, ugly, I don't know what the hell I'm doing, from the depths of my soul crying. And that was my arrival in Ireland. Before coming here as any 23-year-old, I thought I knew it all. I worked in advocacy in Pakistan and Afghanistan, war zones, complex environment, high stakes, a lot of struggle. But I knew who I was professionally. I was confident in my identity that was rooted in the work that I did, in the difference that I believed it made, in my family, in my support system. Moving and starting over in a new country is a different kind of hard. It is sitting alone in a room, questioning everything. Does my experience count here? What the hell am I doing here? Will my voice be heard? Am I seen? And then there is the gap, the amazing career gap where so many of us would have gone through, and so many of the women that I work with have lived through a pause created by invisible labor. For me, it wasn't just the time away from work, it was what that gap did to how I saw myself. I had experience, I had real transferable skills, but when I looked at job listings, when I sat with the uncertainty of starting again, the voices in my head wasn't saying, build on what you have. It was saying, start from scratch, retrain, reskill, look at more things. And I listened to that voice for longer than I should have. I questioned whether my advocacy experience was relevant in Ireland. I looked at and even did courses that did nothing for my career, interior design being one of them. I have no idea where that went. No talent. I shrank my CV. I second-guessed the things that I was actually good at, as if building those skills in Pakistan and Afghanistan somehow made them lesser. What I didn't realize at that time, and realized with age, was that this insecurity wasn't evidence that I wasn't good enough. It was evidence of what displacement does to you. It makes you doubt the things that are most yours. When I was when I wasn't working, I noticed that I stopped speaking in other spaces as well. I remember sitting in meetings, not big public ones, even the PTAs and all those things, and still not choosing to raise my hand. Not because I didn't have anything to say, but because I wasn't sure that I still had the right to. And that's when I realized that being excluded from workforce and being excluded from civic life feel the same. Because when you stop believing your experience counts professionally, you often stop believing it counts anywhere. You stop putting your hand up, you stop walking into rooms, you stop imagining that your voice has a place in a conversation. And that is not just a personal problem. That is a democratic one. 6 years ago, actually no, 8 years ago, I walked into NASC, not as a coordinator, but as a volunteer in women's program. I was looking for exactly what many of the women I work with today are looking for, a connection, a way back in. NASC is a migrant and refugee rights center based in Cork with national reach. The women's program sits within that work. The program is about creating a space for migrant and refugee women, women excluded by language barriers, isolation, and systems that don't recognize their qualifications or their histories to step back into themselves. Not to become someone new, but to return to who they already are. Was that 7 minutes or 5? The women I work alongside every day are not lacking in strength. They're skilled, resilient, and deeply resourceful. Many of them have lived through things most of us will never face. What they're often missing is a space that tells them that that strength still counts here. So we work towards building that space. We build that community. Sometimes it looks like a skill shop. Sometimes it's an English class. Sometimes it's a literacy workshop. Sometimes it's just women sitting around a table, laughing at something small in a language that is not their first. But underneath that ordinariness, something important is happening. Confidence is being rebuilt. Women who went quiet somewhere along the way began to speak again. I have seen women sit through information sessions where everything was explained clearly, the rights, the processes, the procedures, and still say nothing. And then I have seen the same person speak for the first time after sharing tea with someone, after laughing, after being asked, how are you really doing? Having that real connection. Women do not arrive at civic participation through a leaflet or helpline. They arrive through each other. And that's what we are building in women's program. It's not just a support space. It's a civic one. When women build trust across language, across culture, across the loneliness of starting over, they're practicing democracy itself. Showing up, listening, speaking, being taken seriously, and taking others seriously in return. These are not soft skills. They are democratic ones. And that's where the political confidence grows, not from a campaign, but from the everyday experience of mattering. The women I work with are not on the margins of the democracy, waiting to be included. They are already holding communities together. They're raising children, they're caring for others, they're navigating systems in languages that are not their own, building connections in places that were never built with them in mind. What they need is not a pathway in. What they need is a democracy that recognizes that work they're already doing as foundational to it. I know many of you in this room are doing versions of this with different communities in different contexts, often without enough resources and rarely with enough recognition. But this work cannot be delivered by a platform or replaced by a policy. This work holds real space. The kind of space where someone can walk into uncertain and walk out knowing that they matter. And that is not small work. It is the foundation everything else rests on. So I come back to where I began, that feeling of not knowing whether your voice counts, whether you belong in the room, or whether the democracy was built with you in mind. That feeling isn't permanent. It changes through relationships, through recognition, through someone seeing you very clearly and not asking you to be less than who you are. For many of the women, this isn't abstract. They live here, they contribute, they raise children who will grow up in this country, and they are still too often invisible in the conversations that shape it. Democracy doesn't happen only at the ballot boxes. Community is not separate from democracy. Community, when it's working, doesn't say start over. It says come as you are and we'll build from here. That is what I found at NASC, and that is what I try to offer every day. And I believe from everything I've seen that it's what everyone in this room is doing too. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you for the wheel for the invitation, and thank you, Sharon, for not tackling me.
I joked with them that if they didn't hit time, I'd rugby tackle them off, so she was saying thank you for not rugby tackling me. It wouldn't have been a good job anyway, I'm very bad at sport. Amazing, Kiren, and that speaks to something. In the Leadership Academy, I'm honoured to be able to see the invisible leadership that happens in a lot of the migrant and the women's communities, and some of the fabulous work that's been done that nobody knows, but if it went missing, you would feel it in a heartbeat. Last, but by no means least, we have Sorcha Killian. Sorcha is the co-founder and head of operations of the Hygiene Hub, a national social enterprise working to address hygiene poverty through community-led distribution and systemic change. Since co-funding the organisation, she has led its growth from a grassroots initiative to a nationwide network supporting over 30,000 people per quarter through more than 160 community partners. Under her leadership, Hygiene Hub Ireland has distributed over €700,000 worth of essential hygiene products and delivered more than 125,000 kilos of supplies to communities across Ireland. Sorcha has been recognised as a Social Entrepreneurs Ireland awardee, and alongside her co-founder was nominated for the Image PwC Social Entrepreneur of the Year Awards. She's a passionate advocate for systems change, focusing on collaboration, dignity and service design, and long-term solutions to poverty and inequality. Sorcha's story is about how community-driven collaboration can help address unmet societal needs, and how when we design work to be built into other communities, it brings everyone in the charity and social enterprise sector forward together. So, Boolabus, please.
Can we hear me? Oh, perfect. I'd like you all to indulge me in a moment in trying something a little different. We all come from different backgrounds, we've all had different ways we've gotten here this morning, but a lot of us have a few things in common. And so I'd like you all to think about your morning routine. It could be this morning, it could be yesterday, tomorrow, but perhaps you had a hot shower, perhaps you brushed your hair, your teeth, cleaned your face, got into clean clothes, and got ready to start your day. Now remember the day where there is no hot water, where you don't get to brush your teeth, you forget the deodorant, there's a stain on your shirt. Remember how that sits with you all day. Will someone say something, see something, think something, assume something? And now imagine that day is every day. That's your day in and day out lived experience of not having the fundamental right to be clean, to show up in your most confident and presentable self. Because this is not just an imaginary day. This is the lived experience for hundreds of thousands of people across Ireland right now. Sharon just said that last year we did support over 100,000 people with consistent access to hygiene items, an incredible number, and a number that 5 years ago, when 3 strangers met on the internet looking to do something local in their community, was impossible. But I can also tell you that as of right now when I'm speaking to you, we have over 60,000 people on our wait list who do not have access to any of the things I just outlined. And those are just the people who know we exist. Those are the people who someone's actually said, do you need this? Is this a problem that you're dealing with? Because for many people, hygiene poverty is an invisible weight that holds them every day. But what does that look like? Is it just not having the product? It's the job interview that you didn't go to because you couldn't shave. It's the GAA football match. It's the education program, the sleepover, that the little child couldn't go to because they don't have the items that everyone else in their class or their community does. It's the elderly member of our society stepping back, becoming isolated, because their home's not clean, because they never learned how to take care of themselves, of their home, and they're worried about what people will say. These are not imaginary people. These are the people we deal with day in and day out. And so it's not the lack of the item, it's the fundamental restricted choices that we allow to happen in our society day in and day out. Community to us is one of the most important things that we think about. It's how we started. As I said, we were 3 strangers, we met on iVol, we were all looking to do something in our local community. And so when we work with community partners, many of which are represented here today, and I would hazard a guess, many future community partners might be represented here today. And so recently we were actually hiring a community development role for a regional coordinator, and one of the questions we asked them was, what does community mean to you? What is community in practice? And it got me thinking, what does community mean to me? And so I want to share 3 stories from our community with you that have really solidified that in my answer. The first one is of a community partner that we work with based in Cork. So this community partner is a gender-based and domestic violence organisation. And it's such an important work they do, but it's still an incredibly taboo topic. And in a small community, there are people that are really hesitant to go in because someone goes, oh, I saw you went into that place there the other day. What would you be doing in there? Why would you be needing their help? What are the concerns you have there? So we set up a hygiene hub point so that someone could say, oh, I'm just collecting something. I'm just dropping something off. I'm just engaging that way. And maybe on the first time, that is all you're doing. You're dropping something off, you're collecting an item. Maybe on visit 2, you take a leaflet. Maybe visit 3 or 4, you're having a hushed conversation with someone. But a year on, that same community partner told us that there were people that had not only engaged in the service, had gone through a cycle of support, been moved out of unsafe environments, and they themselves became volunteers with us to drop off the products that the next person could come in and take them and start that cycle. Because it doesn't matter if you're solving one form of deprivation, because no one is experiencing one form of deprivation. And it doesn't matter if I solve all of the issues that Hygiene Hub is facing when we know there's someone down the road who's not having their needs met. And so the fundamental design of our program is to expand the services that we work with. For a lot of people, we're that first step in the door or the final piece of a puzzle to a much bigger issue. The second example happened just last week. We work with a youth diversion project based in Tipperary. And the environment that we work in here is a place where kids grow up too hard and too fast. And so there's an amazing project that is a place where kids get to be kids. They get to be silly and climb trees and not worry that if they rip that shirt on the tree, that's the only one they have till Saturday. But these kids, last week we got an email. We've been supporting them for some time. They've been collecting their recycling cans. And they raised €56.40, and they want to donate it back to us. I mean, it's mind-blowing. Do you have any idea how many cans it takes to raise €56.40? Because I do, me with all my shopping bags in Tesco. And the concept that in an environment, like our local volunteer said, this is not a space where people have extra. These are not kids that have the extra 15 cents. But they, children, saw that our service was allowing them to have a service, and they want other kids to be kids. And with that €56.40, we're going to go into more services, provide more items, provide more safe spaces. The final story about community, it's one of my favorites. It's about one of our volunteers. So this volunteer, completely in her own time, she actually runs our schools program, where we go into schools and run education sessions. And about a year or so ago, she got to become a mammy for the first time. It was very exciting. And baby boy decided, as babies do, he was going to come a bit earlier than planned. It was quite a year to meet her because she's class. And so she had a drop in the back of the car that she didn't have time to do before she had to rush to the hospital. And so baby born was born, very healthy, and she told us, on the way home from giving birth, let me drop this off. And we went, my love, that is the epidural talking, please go home, take maternity leave. But she goes, no, it's fine, we'll stay in the car and I'll get the partner to drop it in on the way. What kind of person, when you've just given birth, that's your first thought? But as she explained to me, there's another mammy next door who doesn't have the partner to drop it off on the way home, who doesn't have the family at home waiting to meet baby boy. And I want to make sure that she gets what she needs to. I want to expand the service that I'm a part of. So when I answer that question, what does community mean? What is it? To me, community is where you learn that you matter. And it doesn't matter if you're giving the service, if you're receiving the service, because that's no such thing. There's no such thing as service delivery and beneficiary. We are all building the same community together, and we are all benefiting from it. But the issue is that so many of us are so strapped for time and funding and resources that it feels like we're constantly on an uphill battle. And so for Hygiene Hub, we want to expand your service. We want to be built into what you're doing, but we can't do it without you talking to us. So go home, talk to your beneficiaries, talk to your neighbors, talk to your friends. Ask them, do you need help with this? Is this something that you're experiencing? And then let us know. I can't guarantee we'll get to you tomorrow, but we will be building that data. We will be building a cause for support. There is currently no across-sector data or information on hygiene poverty in all of Ireland. We are all there is. But every single person here has the potential to build that with us. Every single person right now can go onto their phone, find us on Instagram at HygieneHubIRE, find us at LinkedIn, send a message into your Slack, and then after this, reach out to us and let us build your system better. Thank you.